Blizzard posts Mythic Plus changes, I make a video. That's just how this goes. So we're here again. This is a massive, massive post. I'm going to let you know two things before we start. One, I already reacted to probably a good, maybe like half of this. This was data mined when the patch came out. All of the stuff is already in the files, but the testing of the actual dungeons has yet to begin. Maybe it's up by the time you're watching this video, but regardless, yeah, this is all not necessarily new. I reacted to this on the Tuesday while we were waiting for the Plex Storm event from Blizzard, whatever it's called. And it's going to be me reacting to it a second time, but it's going to be mostly me just rereading it. So if you want to see my live reaction to some of that stuff, there's some really, really big changes. But on top of that, this is also the first time we're going to have the new testing of the actual like keystone level changes. So I am going to try to hit the PTR when that's out for a stream, probably tomorrow, and considering Thursday as well. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, this is not all, this is all stuff that we should know already, but they have now officially confirmed all 8 Dragonflight dungeons to the Mythic Plus rotation, which still is very strange wording considering there's not 8, there's 10. But yeah, they're just basically ignoring the Mythic 0 dungeon from Dawn of the Infinites that does not appear to be present, which I guess is not necessarily surprising because we know that they do not want to double up on dungeons back-to-back seasons, but I'm still shocked to see that, to be honest. Okay, one of the most notable changes players can look forward to is the removal of the timer for Mythic Keystone dungeons for what are currently 0 and 10. Players can run these dungeons at their own pace without the need to watch the clock while still holding their skills. So I don't know if this is exactly what was said. I think this is probably the exact same post that we read about the changes. I don't really want to read every single one of these, but frankly, I think this is really, 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 really misleading because it's not what it looks like. I mean, unless I'm also wrong, which is very possible. But when I read this, it makes it sound like Blizzard is saying from 0 to 10, there will be no timers in the new environment. But from what everybody can tell, at least again, before this actual goes live, that's not how it works. It's just from the old 0 to 10 is now compressed into one difficulty called Mythic 0. And because those don't have timers, then this is technically true. But the way they put it is like, for what are currently 0 to 10, players can run through these dungeons at their own pace. And it's like you're talking about these, right? When you use the word these, you normally refer to the previous, whatever, I don't remember English class. But anyway, so this is kind of confusing, but just to be clear, like unless something crazy happens, this is not how it works. The timers are still there for any actual Mythic Plus. It's just Mythic Plus difficulty starts at a different threshold than the way they've tuned it in the past, okay? So everything else is stuff that we've already read, but I just wanted to go over that again because it's, obviously going to be very different. If you watch the stream and you've never read this post, you're probably going to be like, why the hell are you doing a 5? You know what I mean? So yeah, anyway, dungeon updates. These are huge. All right. So not all of these I've already read, but like I said, a lot of these have already been read. But I'm going to try to react to them all one way or the other. Okay. This is probably the biggest thing. Dungeon checkpoint added after defeating Gulping Goliath. And this was the second thing I wanted to bring up before, but I kind of got distracted. A lot of people are complaining about this being the dungeon pool. I have no idea why, because I feel like you either take this as like an absolute, like, this is what we should have expected the whole time, which is basically what they were telling us we were getting, or you were expecting something that nobody was really going to agree on, right? Like there's no consensus. This dungeon absolutely needs to be in a Mythic Plus season. So it's always going to be contested. This is the safest pick for them. All right. That's what I'm trying to say. Like this was always going to be what they did, given the way they handled Mythic Plus dungeons and especially the Dragonflight dungeons. And it's a great way to go back to the dungeons that they started with. So this was always going to be this way. And frankly, all the concerns people had about season 1 dungeons, I don't know how well you remember them because honestly, I don't remember them that well at all. But one thing I do remember is that the affixes had a massive, massive impact. And this is one of the reasons why Thundering was such a bad affix because it was overpowered as shit. It was basically not a buff. Like you lost more than you gained from that. So that affix is gone now. So you have all these dungeons like Ruby Life Pools Nokhud offensive, multiple bosses in these dungeons that require you to stack and manipulate your character's position very, very well. You weren't able to do that because of thundering. Also, fixes like quaking, things like explosive are gone now. So these things are going to have a huge impact on the tuning of the dungeon. But that's before they released this. Like, what'd you think? They were just not going to change anything? So here we go. One of the biggest complaints, Halls of Infusion. Obviously, it's still kind of, there's more to read, but regardless, it's still a difficult dungeon. There's a checkpoint now. That's like the number one complaint, right? Normalize the spawn rate of the crashing tsunami during the gauntlet. That's like the wave, I guess, right? Containment apparatus, containment beams, damage has been reduced by 42%. So that's something we already read. That's a huge, huge, huge nerf. And those are those little orbs that dictated the first part of the dungeon. It was so difficult that you fight 7 or 8 of them on the way, no matter which route you ended up with. And it was very, very, very dangerous. So that's a huge nerf. Primal is Gale Slinger. These mechanics, I don't actually know what this is. Let's go and look this up. I think this is probably one of the, is it the non-elite? Is this the mob at the end? I actually don't know the name of this mob, but anyway, Wind Buffet has been removed and Thunderstorm has been removed. Now uses Thunderstrike, inflicts nature damage to all players within 7 yards of impact. Okay, so straight up, I don't know what that is. I think that's just one of the casters. Wind Buffet, because I think that was something you used to be able to kick, right? I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't know the names of the mobs very well. So, but yeah, it seems like they're changing the trash pretty substantially, really, because of this change too. Primal is Earthshaker's Rumbling Earth rim visual, no longer clipping his terrain. So that one I know for sure. That's the kind of brownish gray circle that was really, really hard to see as a tank. Yeah, apparently it's going to be easier to see now. So that's cool. Encounters Watcher Iridius, first boss. Titanic Fist now has a visual during cast. So I read that on stream last week, and it seems silly. But yeah, I guess maybe it's hard for people to see exactly where it goes. So now you should have less people getting hit by it. Power Overload now has a rim visual around affected players. So that's the mechanic that you have to, people were stacking for. And then Power Field now gradually grows to its full size. Now that's a huge, the wording could mean more than it sounds. It could start very, very, very small and maybe expand rapidly. Or, it could make no impact on the fight at all. But this could be huge. Really, one of the biggest issues with this fight was this whole stacking phase, stacking strategy. I mean, people way overthought this, especially after they nerfed it. This whole Shadow Priest Mass Dispel thing, I never thought this was a good idea. Caused untold confusion and forced the boss to move a massive amount each time. Now it doesn't probably have to be that way, I guess. We'll see. But if you drop that and the boss isn't immediately covered in like a 200-yard range AoE, you're probably good to just move less frequently. Okay, Kajin the Unyielding. That is got to be the ice guy, right? Added rim visuals on ice boulders that will trigger avalanche. Oh, maybe. I don't know what that is, honestly. Okay, Primal Tsunami. Cast away now occurs at 50% health, was 100 energy. Probably the biggest change they could have made, right? Like that's straight up. This is why the fight was so bad. It's like literally like a 8-minute fight on a higher triangle key, whereas if you do it on a low key, you kill it in like a minute. Totally broken. I don't know how the hell they thought this was a good idea. Probably the worst design of any Mythic Plus boss all expansion. And now they just nerfed the fuck out of it. Like that is a ridiculous nerf. So seemingly it's now absolutely only going to appear once per fight. That's going to cut if you just look at whatever your highest key was in season 2 compared to whatever your highest key is going to be in season 4, you're probably cutting like 3 to 5 minutes off it, depending on what key level you were doing back then. This was like legitimately like we had kills of this fight were 7 to 8 minute kills. That's because there's lots of deaths and stuff. But the longer, if you had 3 or 4 people die throughout the fight, that means that middle phase is going longer and longer. You know what I mean? Even if you're rezzing these people, it's a complete mess. That was definitely the worst fight of the expansion, and I'm really glad to see that change. That's pretty much all you need to see to know that Blizzard is making good changes here. But anyway, now we get a really weird thing said. Azure Vault timer has been increased by 1 minute. Strange to just come out and say that. But don't forget, it seems like Azure Vault has had all of its skips removed. We don't know that for sure as of the time of me recording this. because it's how it is in normal, but we haven't done a Mythic Plus version of it. But very, very, very likely it's not going to be, all those skips aren't going to work anymore. So maybe that's just them compensating for that. Okay, Crystal Fury, that should be those giant rock guys. Piercing Shard now is a precast visual. So that's the thing that we used to have so much trouble with back in Season 1. And the impact area has been reduced, seemingly like a tighter spray of it, hopefully. But yeah, we had a lot of trouble with those mobs. Conjured Lasher Mystic Vapors will now be cast less frequently. That's the little flowers. We reacted to this last week. These changes here are basically just going to make you need way less interrupts. And we were talking about this on stream multiple times now, but I really do feel like Season 1's dungeons, like the 4 Mythic Plus dungeons from Dragonflight, are not as caster heavy as the Season 3 total dungeon pool. Like if you look at dungeon like Everbloom and Torn of Tides, those dungeons have copious amounts of interrupts needed. I think Blizzard recognizes that as a point of imbalance because you have something like Vengeance capable of interrupting so many things on its own, basically getting like 3 times more interrupts than any other player. Probably could either tune that back, which maybe they will also, or just make the dungeons less like that, where you only need maybe 1 interrupt from 1 player and it needs to be there, and if you don't have it, you wipe. Instead of you need 30 interrupts on a single pack and you only have 1 option, you take a Vengeance. So anyway, Draconic Breaker, we also react to this. This is basically just changing its only real mechanic. I don't really fully understand what it's going to mean, but it also said it can't be line of sighted on Wowhead's version of this like a week and a half ago. So we'll see. I don't like used to not really even pull these mobs, so I don't even know what's going to happen with them. Encounters Laymore. Okay, so this should be the first boss. Erupting Fissures now follows current target player. So I don't know the names of these mechanics, but this fight was honestly, I think compared to a lot of other fights in all the dungeons that we're going to face, this is probably going to be one of the easier ones now. I think it was again Thundering that caused a lot of problems, but also I think like the damage profiles that classes had with those flowers that made that fight harder than it needed to be. Things have smoothed out now. We have Azure Blade. That's like the blue dragon, the blue Draconid looking one. Reduce the frequency of periodic damage from overwhelming energy to 2.5 seconds was every 2 seconds. So that just makes seemingly that makes that part of the fight easier. I still don't fully understand that. People are trying to explain this to me on the stream. But yeah, I think when this happens, it just means the overall duration of the channel or whatever it is doesn't go down. It just does less damage in the duration of it. But anyway, Umber Skull, this is the last boss. Oppressive Miasma removed in Mythic difficulty. Crystallized now pulses arcane damage while the crystal is shielded. And Cracking Vortex now has a larger movement radius. So this is the big one. I think what this means is there's going to be one very obvious target of those things that spawn. They're little crystals. You have to switch to them and kill them. I think a lot of people were just AoEing them down or ignoring them even. I think they do not want you to do that. So presumably this is a nerf to the fight. But Oppressive Miasma, I believe, is the slow, right? So I'm not really sure how this fight's going to transform. But it seems to me, based on what I'm reading here, is that it's going to be like way more important that you switch to these ads, but you no longer have this massive penalty if 3 people all run over to one ad and it dies, and now you have this massive slow on you. So, but yeah, that fight used to be a whole different fight based on, provided this is a slow based on the name of it, I assume it is. Yeah, that's going to be a huge, huge change. Okay, so all of this shit, we talked about this. I don't really know, like what's what here, but it's all just nerfs to the trash. This is really weird. Diseased meat renamed to rotten meat and is now a poison dispel. So I don't know if this was a disease before or if it was never dispellable. I don't know. And then yeah, a lot of just trash changes that I don't really feel like Dungeon had any trash that needed to be changed. So I don't really have any reactions to that. Like all this stuff here, like I don't even know what most of these mobs are, but I know Decay Speaker, like it's just a type of mob in the dungeon. It's just removing some of the mechanics in the dungeon's trash for some reason. It was already the easiest dungeon of season 2 timer wise, so who knows. Stink Breath, I believe, is the non-elite or the mini boss after the tree boss. And those are substantial changes because the whirlwind's radius has been reduced to 6 yards. Presumably that should mean that you should be able to actually auto attack the mob now while it's doing it. I don't know how many yards you would need for that as a melee, maybe not. But I know other whirlwinds in the dungeon do operate that way. And then we have Stink Breath, which is the thing that made that so difficult. And now locks facing after targeting a player, and now is a visual casting. So I don't know if that's going to change how you do that mechanic. But in the past, this mob was like a guaranteed skip, and then they changed it like fucking week 20. And now you weren't able to mind soothe it anymore, and it caused like bedlam at the end of the season. So presumably they're just nerfing this mob so it's easier to kill and not have to skip. Here we have the first boss, Hacklaw's Warband. Predatory Instincts haste bonus has been reduced to 5%, so that's a nerf for that. Mark of Butchery's damage frequency has been increased to 1 second. So again, that's another one of those things that like I'm pretty sure it doesn't, like say it lasts 3 seconds and it used to hit 6 times. Now it lasts 3 seconds and hits 3 times. I'm pretty sure that's how it is meant to work. I don't think it now lasts 12 seconds. You know what I mean? I don't know. But anyway, Gash Frenzy's damage reduced by 21%. So that's the crazy bleed. We talked about this when I reacted to it on stream, but I did not know this had a duration. Basically, if you let 15 seconds go off in a higher key, you were just dead. But I actually reviewed a Brackenhide like just 2 weeks ago randomly, and I noticed that it was falling off the group, that it was survive it. It was like a low, it was like a 13, and they were able to survive it, and it would just not get healed off, but it would just go away. So now it's going to be, and so this was 45 seconds before. So that was like most of the fight. It would just be on them and just go away. Now it's only 15 seconds. So this should make the fight. This was a really, really hard fight for Resto Druid, something like Shaman, something with more kind of, triage healing, hot healing. Holy Pally dominated this fight, and that was Holy Pally's niche back in season 2. That was the best healer. Now Holy Pally's not like that anymore. So, something like Dispriest probably would struggle really bad. Now it seems like you just keep everybody alive for 15 seconds and it goes away. So we'll see what happens. Okay, Algeth'ar, fan favorites. Definitely glad to see it back. Spellbound Scepter's Arcane Rain has been removed. I'm pretty sure that's, if you went to that left side first, that would be the swirls on the ground, and you just straight up moved out of them. People got destroyed by them all the time. But yeah, so I guess that's removed. Invoker's Arcane Missiles damage has been reduced by 50%. That's a nerf, obviously, but I don't know exactly which mob does that. We have the two biggest changes in probably, well, now that we've seen the halls changes, but in the first post, these are the two biggest changes we saw in any boss for the season. We have Croth. The Firestorm's frequency has been reduced, which is a big change, but we also have Savage, Pex, initial and periodic damage reduced. And I think it was something like 30%. It was a pretty big change on the Wowhead data mining. This was why the fight was hard as a tank. It was very, very easy as Blood DK, frankly, but for every other tank, I remember doing it on my alt prop pally, and I straight up couldn't survive. Like, I was just getting killed by them. Just couldn't even do the fight. And then Echo of Doragosa has had a new mechanic, but it literally just says, like, this is what a Wowhead data mining should say, but there's no link. Unleash energy added as the new mythic mechanic. Who knows what that is? I mean, I don't know. Okay, so I already reacted to this. I'm just going to let you know that the burning chains have basically been removed from the dungeon. Neltharus, it was notably all centered around pulling the chains. It added, like, if you didn't use a single chain, it adds something like 7 minutes to the total dungeon timer. It's hugely different now. I mean, without those chains, the dungeon was actually very, very, very hard timer-wise. I don't know what it's going to look like, because now instead of killing the mobs, basically it stuns them and increases their damage taken by 50%. I think it was 25 last week though, but maybe not. No, I think it was always 50, but either way, it's only 50 for 5 seconds. The question is, how does it overlap? Like, do you get 250% for 5 seconds? Do you get 50% for 25 seconds? Does the mob stay stunned for 25 seconds? Who knows? But one way or the other, the prevailing strategy was to have an entire segment of the dungeon deleted. Then you would wait for the chains to be back up. Then you do it again, blah, 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 blah. That's very likely not going to be the strategy anymore, unless somehow, it not only stacks to 250%, but it also goes 250% for 25 seconds. Because even if it was 250% for 5 seconds, that's not dying in that time. And even if it was 50% for 25 seconds, that's not even fucking bloodlust. You know what I mean? Like that, we're barely gonna make any dent on this trash at all in that time, and that's just not gonna matter. So the one thing I also have to note here is the chains used to be on the DPS meter, and a lot of people complained about how much of the total damage they actually did. This obviously scaled with key level. Now it's going to be a lot harder to tell because good groups are still going to make crazy good use out of this. So like it's going to get super inflated for the top groups. You're going to see people doing say like 650k overall. It's probably going to because they're going to pull huge swaths of trash and get this massive debuff on the enemies. But regardless, I don't think the average player cares about that. So we have these changes. These are really not like even worth reading, but they have changed to Targath and Warlord Sargra encounter. The one big change for this fight, well, both of these are actually relatively, yeah, they're good changes. Curse of the Dragon Horde now stacks, and the duration reduced from 30 seconds down to 30 seconds was 5 minutes. So basically, the way it used to work was it would be a permanent debuff on every single player, and the dispeller, you know, the person who can get rid of it, the curse would have to choose who they want to get rid of it on. Now, seemingly, it'll drop because I'm pretty sure every gold phase is longer than 30 seconds. So it will drop every time, and you'll have some window in between where you won't have the curse at all. This is also nice for AMS because you can now AMS, you know, every other one, and you'll only have the debuff half the time. But you pretty much could do that anyway. But regardless, you would need the spells for that in the past. So, but yeah, they changed Targath. Seemingly, it's going to be a different fight to tank now. I don't fully understand it, so I'm just not even going to react to it. But we read it on the live stream, and it didn't make a lot of sense to me. Okay, we have the Nokhud offensive. The boss changes are as follows. Okay. Next up, we have whatever this is, Nokhud Longbow. Multi-shot has been removed, and Rain of Arrows will now be cast less frequently. I'm pretty sure these were the unavoidable damage that would happen on the trash in front of Granith or whatever. I don't know for sure, but all I know is I'm going to let fly for sure. I'm going to eat pie. Nokhud Beastmaster's Hunt Prey damage bonus has been reduced by 25%. These are the mobs. Apparently, these mobs were around the last boss, and everybody used to skip these. The fact that they're changing the strategies on trash that never got pulled tells me they might be changing the ability to skip them, but we'll find out. Okay, we have Balakar Khan as the last boss. The frequency of Stormwind, that's the city for Alliance, during intermission has been reduced to every 10 seconds, was every 6 seconds. Pretty sure that's the channel that he does while you're killing the ads. It does a lot of damage. You have to get out of that phase ASAP. People used to fucking bloodlust in that phase because of how much damage that phase was. Seemingly won't be as bad, but it's not, you know, they didn't gut it. Seemingly it's still going to happen a lot. But, you know, every 6 seconds, that was a lot. So, okay, Ruby Life Pools. This is the one that a lot of people, you know, don't necessarily remember fondly. Primal Terra Sentry Stone Missile has been removed. That's the big rock elemental guys, I think. Maybe not, though. And then the only other change they made is Kairaka, which is the last boss. Inferno Core's duration has been increased to 4 seconds, was 3. And the periodic damage has been reduced to 25%. This is the reason the fight was so hard. This fire damage on this mechanic was insane. And if you got this on a higher key, you pretty much needed to be ready to use a defensive the second it went out on you. Otherwise, you would die. This fight was incredibly hard to heal because of thundering, because of things like quaking. Those things are gone now. So this fight should be substantially easier. This is probably going to be the fight that's going to be made the easiest out of all the ones from the original Dungeon Pool. This one was probably like the hardest, and now it's going to be one of the easier ones. And then we have Uldaman, and that's some nonsense change. Fiery Surge's damage has been reduced by 50%. It was kind of unfair as melee, but frankly, you're probably still not going to want to get hit by it, so I have no idea why they would change the damage. They should make them smaller. That's what the change they should have made was. There's also this. Hard mode does not have a timer, so Dawn of the Infinite hard mode. Hard mode does not have a timer and rewards a hero track item. Hard mode is intended to be more challenging than a standard mythic difficulty dungeon. Okay, cool. Thanks for the heads up. I have no idea what that referring to. In the past, hard modes for the Mythic Zeros were like challenges, kind of like achievement type challenges. I don't know if that's what this is. They didn't say anything about it. Maybe it is straight up just a higher tuned version of Dawn of the Infinites. So if that is the case and is more challenging than a standard mythic difficulty dungeon, then what the fuck does that mean? What is a hero track item? Where do you get that normally? Is that the final level of gear? If so, that seems like a huge change. I don't know what this is. But yeah, stay tuned. Hopefully, we'll be here tomorrow doing some Mythic Plus tuning or Mythic Plus testing. I haven't seen any confirmation that the PTR is up, but I will get it set up overnight and hopefully we will be good. But antique bronze bullion vendors on season 4 include new cosmetic vendor. Sounds good. So I'm sure there's going to be lots of crazy stuff coming in season 4. So stay tuned, guys. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.